The year was 2050, a time most unfine. The world had lost its wonderful shine. Where truffula trees once grew tall and so grand, now stood great big buildings all over the land. The forests were gone, chopped down bit by bit, for factories that fizzled and never would quit. They puffed out their smoke, a smoggy smog grey that covered the sun and chased blue skies away. The world was a pavement, a hard, stony place with no room for a flower to show its sweet face. The land was all asphalt and concrete and steel, a world that had forgotten how green used to feel. Not a whisper of wind through the leaves could be heard, because there were no leaves, not a single green word. The air was so hot it would shimmer and bake, a terrible feeling for goodness' sake. The rivers ran slow with a chemical goo, not the clean, splashy water that once we all knew. The ground was all cluttered with thneeds and with junk, a sad, smelly pile that stunk and that stunk. The great, glorious earth, once so vibrant and bright, was now just a shadow, a long, endless night. The bosses of industry, big wiggy men, had built it and built it again and again. They cared not for nature, for soil or for stone, but only for profits they called their own. A sad, sorry state for a planet so dear, filled with nothing but worry and smog-fumous fear. From the tippy-top windows of towers so high, the bosses looked down with a glint in their eye. They saw all their factories, their buildings, their might, and thought to themselves, "Oh, this world is just right." They did not see the sorrow, the grey and the grime. They just saw the success of their terrible crime. They had taken the green and had turned it all grey, and they planned to keep doing it day after day. The sparkle of streams and the songs of the wood were things they had simply misunderstood. To them, a tree was just something to chop, to make bigger factories that never would stop. The world had forgotten the soft, gentle sound of a small seedling pushing its way through the ground. It had forgotten the buzz of the bee on the breeze and the rustle of life in the wonderful trees. Everything was replaced with a whir and a clang, the mechanical noises of a factory gang. The children born now in this world of no green had never once witnessed a beautiful scene. They had never seen a barbaloot in its suit or tasted a sweet, juicy trufula fruit. They lived in a world that was manufactured and cold, a story of sadness that had to be told, a world that was grey and getting quite old. The animals, oh, the poor animals who stayed! They had nowhere to run, and they were so afraid. The swomy swans who once sang a song clear and sweet now coughed in the air from the smoke and the heat. Their voices were scratchy, their feathers were grey, they could barely fly off at the end of the day. The hummingfish, who once hummed in their pond, found their water was sludgy and their humming was gone. They floated so sadly, with no place to go, in the glum, glummy water that moved ever so slow. The creatures of the earth, both the big and the small, had no place to call home, no place at all. And the people you see, the ones who were poor, had the very same troubles, and a great many more. They breathed in the smog with a gasp and a wheeze. There was no fresh air, not a hint of a breeze. Their lungs filled with soot and their eyes filled with tears, and they lived every day with the worst of all fears. The children were weak, and they could not run and play in the hot, sticky city that choked them all day. They coughed and they sputtered, and many fell ill from the air that was poisoned and never stood still. Oh, the unfairness of it all was so plain to see. For those without money, no clean air was free. The rich folks, however, oh, they were all right. They stayed in their homes, all shiny and bright. They had big machines that would whir and would hum to make the air cool and keep their world from being glum. They had air conditioning blowing a chill, while the poor folks outside were so dreadfully ill. They walked around town with their tanks on their backs, filled with O'Hare air sold in convenient packs. They breathed it all in, so fresh and so clean, the most wonderful air that you've ever had seen. But this air cost a fortune, a terrible price, which the poor folks couldn't pay, which wasn't quite nice. So the world was divided, a world split in two, between the rich who had air and the poor, sad and few. The rich lived in bubbles of comfort and ease, doing whatever they happened to please. They looked out their windows at the grey, smoky mess and felt no concern and no sadness, I guess. The poor, on the other hand, struggled to breathe in the world that the greedy ones chose to bequeath. They looked at the sky with a desperate plea, wishing for just one green leaf on one tree, a world that was better for you and for me.
Perfect, perfect, perfect.
Then, something happened. Something big and profound. The earth, it got angry from deep underground. It had taken enough of the smoke and the grime. It decided right then, this was the end of the line. God looked down from the heavens with a tear in his eye at the grey, broken world underneath the grey sky. He saw all the greed and the mess it had made and the promise of nature that had been betrayed. He said, "This must stop. This must stop here and now. I will shake things and break things. I'll do it, and how?" And with a great frown and a powerful nod came the terrible, furious anger of God. A rumbly-grumbly started, a deep, mighty shake. The whole world began to tremble and quake. The buildings, so tall and so proud and so grand, began to all wobble all over the land. They swayed and they shivered, they cracked and they groaned, as the very foundation of the planet bemoaned. The great earthquake roared with a deafening sound, and the towers of steel came a-tumbling down. They crashed into pieces, a great metal heap, while the people who built them were fast asleep. The greedy ones' towers, their pride and their joy, were now nothing more than a smashed, broken toy. But that wasn't all. Oh no, that's not the end. From the ocean, a message the waters did send. A huge, splashy, crashy wave rose to the sky. It was taller than buildings. Oh my, oh my, oh my. A great big tsunami, a wall of blue-green, the biggest wave anyone ever had seen. It washed over the cities. It cleaned all the muck, and the factories all vanished, with very bad luck. It washed away the smog, and the soot and the dust, and the mountains of metal all turned into rust. The world was being washed, being scrubbed, being cleaned from the terrible, horrible mess that had been. The rich folks' fine houses and their fancy machines were all swept away in these terrible scenes. Their O'Hare air tanks were all lost in the spray as nature decided to have its own way. But the poor folks, you see, were in a different place. They lived in the low parts with no time to race. As the water came rushing, a great mighty flood, it seemed they'd be lost in the water and mud. But nature, you see, had a much different plan for every last woman and child and man. It wasn't about hurting the small and the meek, but about a new future, a new world to seek. As the waters rose higher, a magical thing made the hearts of the poor folks all flutter and sing. The dolphins, who'd hidden so deep in the blue, came swimming to help them. They knew what to do. They guided the people to places of height and pushed them to safety with all of their might. And what did they find in those safe, higher parts? The very last trees with their strong, loving hearts. The trees lowered their branches, so sturdy and long, and lifted the people where they would be strong. The trees and the dolphins, they worked as a team to save all the people. A beautiful dream. When the waters went down and the shaking was done, a brand new world started beneath the warm sun. The smog was all gone and the sky was so blue, the air was so fresh and so clean and so new. The rubble of buildings was covered in soil, a brand new beginning from all of the toil. And out of that soil a small sprout did appear, chasing away every last bit of fear. Then another and another, they grew and they grew, a forest of green for the whole world to view. The earth was healing, becoming alive, a place where all creatures could flourish and thrive. The animals came back, they came back in a pack. The barbaloots frolicked, they were finally back. The swomy swans sang, and their songs were so clear for everyone listening for miles to hear. The humming fish hummed in the clean, sparkling ponds, and nature restored all its beautiful bonds. The world was a carpet of green grass and flowers, a gift from the sky after watery showers. The people who were saved, the poor and the kind, had a brand new perspective, a new frame of mind. They worked with the earth and they helped it to grow, the most important lesson they'd ever know. And so our story ends with a hope, bright and clear, a message for you that I want you to hear. The earth is a treasure, a gift we must keep. While its forests are living, while its oceans are deep, we must speak for the trees, for the bees, for the air, and show all the creatures how much we all care. For unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better, it's not. So protect our green world, keep it healthy and grand, and hold its great future right in your hand. For a beautiful planet is a joy to us all. Let's answer together when we hear nature's call.